Senator Rand Paul, thank you so much for being here. I know it's been an insane 24 hours. Did you know that Dr. Fauci was once again shaking when you were asking him questions today? This is a little thing that we noted as we were watching the footage. You had Dr. Fauci once again shaking in his chair.
I would have been happier if he would have been speaking in his chair. We didn't know until he showed up that he would not agree to testify and that he would hide behind the Fifth Amendment. As many people have commented on the internet, can you still use the Fifth Amendment when you've been granted a full pardon? This is a question we're going to pursue. I think that hiding behind the Fifth Amendment when you've been granted complete immunity, I think it's important for people to know that the immunity was granted. Only one other person in history has ever been granted this particular form of extensive immunity, and that's Hunter Biden. So he'll be remembered in history as getting the same pardon that Hunter Biden got, but then he refused to answer questions, and so we'll vote next week on whether to hold him in contempt. There is a charge called contempt of Congress, obstructing an investigation. We think he's guilty of that because all he had to do was answer honestly. Even if he answered that he destroyed records, which we believe he did, which is a crime, he's been pardoned for that. So there wouldn't have been any legal liability to simply telling the truth.
So why did he take the fifth? Does he believe that his pardon isn't real from Joe Biden? Does he not want to test the auto pen? Our contention is that he's not certain that he's really pardoned, frankly.
I don't think it's that so much. I think he knows that he's guilty of having funded dangerous research that led to the pandemic. I think the evidence is now so overwhelming. There's also so much evidence that what he would say in private and what he truly believes was the opposite of what he would say in public. A good example is that the diaries revealed that in January of 2020, he already knew that the marketplace is not where the evidence came from, not where the infection came from. And yet for years after that, he kept saying publicly, we have him saying it on dozens of news programs saying, the wet market, we've got to shut down the wet market. This is coming from the animals at the wet market. And yet privately, he knew in January of 2020 that the first cases of COVID had no association with the wet market. Now, showing this distinction between what he says privately and publicly is incredibly important. You'll recall from the beginning of it when he was telling people privately that we've studied masks and they don't work, you don't need to wear a mask, and then he's wearing 3 masks. He would say privately that he believed in natural immunity, but then publicly he would say nothing to folks. And we wound up with this bizarre policy where I knew a family where the mom died, the teenage children and young children got COVID, so did the husband. They all recovered and the mom was still alive, but as she was dying in the hospital, they wouldn't let them visit even though they were immune. It took people, and they weren't going to pass the disease. It took somebody with some courage who was in the position of public health to say, yes, natural immunity. It historically attaches to virus. It's not perfect, but if you've had the virus, you've recovered, and you're no longer shedding the virus. They were doing all this testing. Why in the world would they not let someone be with their mom as they were dying? They would never ask at the nursing home. Grandmother's dying. We got people holding their hand up to a window. They can't be in the same room. There was no science behind any of this, but it all came from Anthony Fauci, who said privately how happy he was that the mayor of New York agreed to close the schools. Gavin Newsom agreed to close the schools. But then publicly he would say, oh, I'm just a doctor and I have no power over this. I didn't cause these mandates. Other people did. But to his diary, he was saying, thank goodness I got him. Look, I got Mayor Bill de Blasio to shut down the schools. He was proud of himself. So there's never been such a picture of hypocrisy between what he was saying privately, which was probably truthful, and publicly, which was 180 degrees the other way.
Senator, we also found out that Dr. Fauci got a blood clot, an infarction after getting the vaccine, and then lied to the public about this and got treatment privately and secretly, and could have actually told the public about this. This did seem to be a major problem and a reported problem with some of the vaccines, specifically AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson. But Fauci, once again, kept that a secret. Another lie that we found out because of the work that you did exposing his diary. What does that say about Fauci?
You know, the vaccine complications, one of the top 5 complications are blood clots. A type of a blood clot is a pulmonary embolism, which I think he had pulmonary embolism, but then they also described it as pulmonary infarct, which is much rarer. But basically, an artery occludes and a segment of the lung sort of loses its circulation. An infarct is sort of an absence of circulation. But yeah, this was commonly being associated, and other people had it. And let's say you were just John Smith, and you lived 2 hours away from a big city and you had this happen, you can die from this. And so by him downplaying it, hiding it, and then all I can remember is his pictures going door to door, pushing the vaccine on everybody, and then not really being honest with it. I'm a moderate on this issue. I think older people may well have been better off getting vaccinated than getting the disease. Older people died. But with younger people, I think it's the opposite. Younger people, particularly 15, 20, 25, 30, 35 that are young and healthy, I think the risks of the vaccine were greater. And I think that's an honest approach. And then I would let people voluntarily make their decisions whether they want to be vaccinated. Instead, Fauci was like a religion. All vaccines are good. Everybody should get it. You should get it all the time. You should keep getting them. He's probably still saying you should get them every 6 months. And yet you have to be honest with people and tell people what the side effects are. There was also not a huge number, but about 6 out of every 10,000 young people got a heart inflammation, and it presents with chest pain and elevated cardiac isoenzymes, which is the way a heart attack presents. It's not exactly a heart attack, but you're presenting like a heart attack when you're 15 years old. The death rate from COVID for a 15-year-old, a healthy 15-year-old, was 0. There were no healthy 15-year-olds, not like there was one, there was 0 15-year-olds that died. There's no reason to vaccinate them. And so him not telling that he had a significant complication is dishonest in his situation, because he was downplaying the vaccine's side effects and with a religious fervor saying everyone should be vaccinated, when in reality you're supposed to tell people the risks and the benefits, and then people make an informed decision whether they want medical treatment.
Senator, I did have a question for you about a new revelation that we have here in the state of Florida. Breaking news that the Attorney General in the state of Florida, James Uthmeier, is looking at prosecuting potentially Dr. Fauci for his crimes based on Florida law that would not be covered by a federal pardon from Joe Biden. What is your take on this? Have you had any outreach from the Attorney General of Florida?
We're happy to share our information with anybody. Most of the things that we had looked at that we believed were breaking a federal law were destroying records, which is a federal law, lying to Congress, which is a federal law. And now what we're contemplating is sending a referral to the Department of Justice for obstruction of a congressional investigation. So those are very federal. I don't know right offhand what the state charges would be. We're open to cooperating. We have a mountain of evidence, and we're more than willing to share it with people who wish. We've been sharing most of it, frankly, with the public. We've been putting as much out there as possible so people can make up their own mind. Plus, there's 1,000,001 people like yourself and other sleuths that will go through this and find things that maybe even we didn't find.
So you are encouraging state AGs to potentially take up this issue. What does it look like from your committee right now? Because your committee will have now a contempt vote. Do you believe that that will pass out of committee and Republicans will be on board? And would that be able to go directly to the DOJ? Would this be similar to a Steve Bannon or Peter Navarro contempt vote where they both served prison time?
Yeah, I think they were held in contempt for not appearing or testifying. I think that's why Anthony Fauci showed up today, because there's pretty solid precedent that the courts sided against Bannon and against Roger Stone for not testifying. That's why his attorneys, he had high-priced attorneys. That's why he showed up today and pled the fifth. But whether or not what will happen with contempt, we will vote it out of committee. It will take every Republican voting for it, because I don't know that there'll be any Democrat. There's a possibility we might get one Democrat vote. But my plan is, at this point, probably to send it directly to the Department of Justice. You could demand a floor vote, but I don't have a great deal of confidence that it would pass or be able to escape the filibuster numbers. You'd have to get 60 votes, and that would require 7 Democrats, and I think that's unlikely.
Do you believe, final question here, was it exciting to kick Dr. Fauci's lawyer out of the actual room? Did that bring you at least a little bit of cold comfort?
Well, I'm not a confrontational kind of person. I actually don't love it and worry that, about acting in too aggressive of a manner. But I gave him several warnings. He didn't listen to any of them. And when you plead the fifth, one of the disadvantages to pleading the fifth is you don't get to testify. So you don't get to present your side. That's part of the Fifth Amendment. What the attorney wanted was for Anthony Fauci to plead the fifth, not have any repercussions, and then his attorney would do all the positive spin for him. We weren't going to let that happen. And I think in a court of law, he would have gone to jail. And I think if he treated a court of law with that great disrespect, I think he did not act in a becoming way for a lawyer. And frankly, he probably should be reprimanded by the people who, before which bar he, if he holds the Virginia bar or DC bar, I would think that the bar should look at that kind of behavior because it's disrespectful to the law.
Just want to give you the final word here, Senator. We've never seen anything like it. Your fellow senators seemed very, very upset. Ron Johnson, Josh Hawley, Bernie Moreno. First time we've ever heard the F-bomb broadcast on Fox News. First time we ever heard the F-bomb really in a committee hearing room. Who the fuck do you think you are? He said to Dr. Fauci. Things got heated, and then Dr. Fauci couldn't even turn around and look at the people who had been affected by his policies. It's really disgraceful for somebody who claims to be the science. The last word on, what are your takeaway observations from today, Senator?
I think the arrogance, the hubris, this is a man who said he was the science, and if you challenge him, you're challenging science. That is an arrogance beyond belief. But the hypocrisy of saying things in private that are the opposite of what he said in public, the idea that for 25 years he's been an advocate of this dangerous research is a true debate. So this isn't like he slipped up and accidentally made a mistake and it led to the pandemic. He philosophically has defended this dangerous research for 15, 20 years. There's a debate, a long-standing debate that has nothing to do with politics between scientists about whether we should fund this kind of dangerous research. And I think he's on the wrong side of history. I think history will judge him harshly. I think the line of questioning that showed that he used 8 employees at NIH to apply for monetary awards for him. He got $1 million award, and then the ethics commission has to look at it, and everybody was like, he wants the money. We got to figure out a way to get to yes for Tony. That it just doesn't look good. And then he takes the fifth. I think he'll be remembered more like a mafia don than a great scientist.
May God bless you, Senator, for your tireless work on this topic, for the reveal of that diary. It was so dark, so disturbing, so pathological. No 70-year-old, nearly 80-year-old man should be talking about Julia Roberts that way or his own press clippings. It was disgraceful. Thank you for shedding light on this. At least it brings some people cold comfort. This man truly had a devastating effect on all of our lives. And we're thankful for Senator Rand Paul. Thank you.
Thank you.